Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze. I'm your host, Professor Jeremy Vilmer. This week we are talking about wrestling's greatest families, and to help us do that, joining us now, Bobby Blaze.
Hey, Professor, man, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. How about yourself?
All right, man. Well, I'm doing all right. I just, I'm a reader. And sometimes I like to read some fine filth. Mm-hmm. So I went through and I was reading some old penthouse letters the other day, and man, this one, it was really good. When this lady, she had a dilemma. She wrote into the forum there, and she says, man, I've been really noticing my neighbor. He's really hot. I've been wanting to hook up with him. Every day my husband leaves for work, I notice he's kind of looking at me through the door and this and that. So finally one day, I guess her husband leaves. Right there is a guy knocking on the door. She lets him in and they just go at it. She says she lets him in. They start fucking right up against the door. And here's my dilemma. Once he started putting that big dick in my pussy, it felt so good. But when he was backing my ass up, the doorknob went up my ass. And I came like I never came before. Now I have a real problem. I don't know if I like my neighbor's dick more or the doorknob more.
That is a dilemma.
That's a dilemma.
Yeah.
So I thought, are those letters full of shit or not, Jeremy? So I thought, I'm going to write. Well, Penthouse, I like Playboy rather has the Playboy Advisor. And I thought, I'm going to get me some advice from the Playboy Advisor. So I wrote me a letter. Mm-hmm. And I said, Dear Playboy Advisor. And I wanted to see my name in a magazine and see if they'd even answer it. I said, my name's Bobby, and I like to masturbate with sandpaper. Do I have a problem? Well, the next month, the letter come back and said, Dear Bobby, if you do, you won't for long. I'm doing pretty good, Professor. Happy belated 4th of July to everyone out there.
Yeah, happy 4th of July to everybody in America who's listening to us, which is like 98% of our listeners right now. But apparently, Bobby, we lost our French audience when we took that little break.
Okay. Well, we'll get them back, man, because word of mouth, man, word of mouth.
Exactly. So, Bobby, this week we are going to be talking about wrestling's great families. You want to preface anything before we go into it?
Oh, yeah, we're going to get some right. Actually, we'll get them all right, so there's no right or wrong in this. I do know we're not going to we're going to do them. We're not putting them in a top 10, so don't take us a top 10. We don't talk shit about anyone, so we're not going to talk any backstage, out of school politics, nothing like that. We're just going to try to mention some of the great families in professional wrestling, try and do them right and do them honorable. And we may leave one or two off of this. It wasn't intentional, but we just, for time, we're just going to try to hit on from way back when to every family member we can think of that fits these into this category of these families. I think it's going to be a fun episode. I know you've done some serious research on a couple of these, and I was really, really impressed. And I hope our fans just enjoy this episode. I think they will. Know our audience. I think they'll really, or hopefully I know the audience. I think they'll really enjoy this about the some of the greatest and best families, or first families of professional wrestling, if you will.
Yeah. And like you were saying, we're not gonna like put them in any order or anything. We're just gonna kind of riff on them as we go. So yeah, obviously we're gonna miss somebody's family in here, but whoever we miss, if you want to give us a shout out, jump over to anchor.fm/bell-to-bell-blaze. You can leave us a message right there, and we might play it on the show and answer whatever you're saying about it there too.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great to have a caller call in about that, Jeremy. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So you want to jump right in this? Do you have any shout outs or anything?
Well,
I got a couple things. One more thing I did want to say before we do it. So if you got a shout out or anything, go ahead and I'm going to say.
I'll tell you what, I need about 30 seconds to hit what I'm going to hit. So you do yours, I'll do mine, and then we'll start.
Okay. Well, real quickly, I ran into one of our listeners here locally. Shout out to Jim Heald. Jim Heald stood way back from each other. Getting ready to go to the gym. He's getting ready to go to the store, mask on, took him down because we're way apart from each other. So hi, Jim, if you're out there. He went home the other day to catch up on the first 2 episodes of this season. And so it's good to see him. Next thing, just so you all know out there, listen, guys, please. As you know, you can follow me on Twitter at BobbyBlaze744. You can follow Jeremy at The Geekish Cast on Twitter. Also, the Bell to Bell Blaze on Twitter. Listen, I don't know about the professor. I can only speak for myself. And I say, if you're coming to this podcast for political, religious views or anything like that, you might be on a wrong podcast, because we don't get into that a whole lot or whatever, but just kind of put that out there. If we ever talk about religion, church or politics or whatever, take it tongue in cheek. And I did hear from I think you did too, Jeremy. Heard from Tex, and so sometime soon, we hope to hear good things. He said he's getting ready for the hot tag to tag back into the podcast.
Yep.
And just remember to keep him out there, and your positive vibes, your thoughts, your prayers, whatever you need to send out. Cause Tex will be back with us soon, we hope. Okay.
Yeah, I think tomorrow's his day in the chair, I believe. So that's probably, if you're holding back prayers or, happy thoughts, maybe give it July 6th, I think is the date,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So by the time the people hear this, just realize that, we're again, for political views, religion views, whatever, don't, just take something with a grain of salt. But Tex said he liked the joke, and he liked the Brother May thing, and Brother May was looking at, Brother May loves you, he said. Wasn't that what he said?
That's what, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So, but yeah, he's got a tough time ahead of him, but he's going to pull through this because he already said he's going to tag back in on this bad boy soon. So, positive thoughts, man.
Absolutely.
And with that, that's really all I had to say, is just that one shout out. Wanted to send something out about, the political views and religious views, and make sure Tex got a shout out. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Get well soon, Tex. We're pulling for you here. All right. And Bobby, all I need to cover, is I'm going to talk about our new host at Anchor.fm.
Great deal, man. Great deal. It's free.
It is. Everything's right there. All
right. We ready to jump into this bad boy this week?
I believe so.
All right, I'll start us off real quickly. I'm just going to make this one real brief, but if it wasn't for this family here, I would have I would have gotten involved in a professional wrestling business one way or another. But I'll have a great debt of gratitude for the Malenko family. Larry Simon, Professor Boris Malenko, that's my trainer and mentor. Somewhere around a 4 or 5 month period, the great Dean Malenko jumped in and started taking over my training and helped me very, very much. And then his older brother, Joe, who was trained under Carl Gotch, but they had a gym down there in Tampa, Florida, at the Malenko Training Academy. And I got to work with Jody some, and especially when he was working on timing and stuff to go back to Japan, he helped me quite a bit, just little things back in the day. So the first family I want to mention is the obvious, Professor Boris Malenko, Joe Malenko, and Dean Malenko. And they have trained so many people through the years. The list could go on and on and on. And actually, the other day, I talked to Sean Watman, one of our, one X-Pac, 1, 2, 3 kid, whatever. I spoke to him, a friend of ours, who we thought a couple of years ago had passed away, Willie Wilkinson Jr., who lived in Japan about 8 or 10 years, legitimate tough guy shooter, also trains under Malenko's. Got his phone number today. He's alive. He's just been traveling throughout the U.S. doing some work and stuff, man. And I got to speak with Willie for about a half an hour the other day, the same day. So it's a couple of my smiles that day. I got to talk to X-Pac, which I hadn't talked to for a couple of years. I got to talk to Willie, and I hadn't spoken to him for over 20 years, the last time we was in Japan together, probably. But he's trained Bob Cook. They just helped so many people. Al Perez back in the day. And I if I start naming people, I'm going to miss people, But the Malenko families who I put up there, and again, it's not the top for any particular reason other than I wanted to say thanks. So,
well, anyway. Here's the thing. It's your show, and they trained you, and they can be at the top of the list. I mean,
Oh, yeah. So, and I watched something the other day that kind of, I can't remember who it was. It was Arn Anderson. Ask Arn anything. And Jeremy, you've always said when Dean was Wrestler of the Year, like 1997 or so, but you always talked about how you thought how great you thought Dean was.
Mm-hmm.
Arn Anderson put him over huge, pretty much just like you did. And I thought, man, that's really awesome. How much Arn thought of him when he first met over in Japan, and we first brought him in. Of course, now they've worked together, I guess, in WWE, and now they're both in AEW as producers. So I just think that's cool when someone repeats something that we've said on this podcast, here and there in the past, and back when some of those YouTube video stuff, the way you and I speak highly of some of these people, other people go above and beyond saying something positive and good about someone we think so much of. So good stuff.
No, I mean, definitely for my money, Dean Malenko is one of the best wrestlers. I mean, technically, when it comes to his ground game and everything, what he can do in the ring, how seamlessly he can flow from one move to another. And then just from a showmanship standpoint, everything he does looks like it hurts. You know what I mean? When he drops that like belly breaker on you or any of that,
God,
it just,
yeah. Man, and I got to work with him several times when I was in Florida, and it was just a great experience. Man, I was nervous. I was nervous at Horland Church the first time I wrestled him. A little show called Suncoast Pro Wrestling. I had a little TV. They shoot on like a Tuesday. I think come back out on like a Sunday just on cable access TV down there. But, man, I was like, oh, my God, I got to work with Dean Malenko. Of course, it was an honor, but, yeah, it was a good match for me. I won't say it was his best match because I'm sure he had a lot better one. Of course, I was just beginning too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was great to get in the ring with.
You know, Bobby, I have a question about Dean Malenko. So when he wrestled in ECW, they called him Shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Did he have a reputation for fucking going into business for himself, or was that just okay?
Very professional. Here's the thing: he could. I've seen him. Oh, yes, he can go. Believe me, he'd done Samba, and he worked some, of course, Jody worked with him some when he was younger. Dean didn't like that particular style. Plus, I think in high school, his wrestling coach, I know that high school that he went to there, I think Hiro Matsuda was one of the coaches that helped, and, of course, he was around Eddie Graham, and he went to school with, like, Pat Tanaka, and around the same time, I think Mike Graham was a little bit older, of course. Yeah. But he was around all those great guys, had his older brother, like I said, and then Mike Graham, and around the sportatorium there in Tampa. No, he could have went into business for himself at any time, believe me.
Okay.
I never saw him have to do that because of the professionalism. And that's what I will say about Joe and Dean. When they got you in a ring down there, you was not in the ring with anyone safer than those two guys.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, we don't know. We as like the audience at home don't know a whole lot about Dean Malenko behind the scenes, but you got to figure he's a second generation guy. His brother's in it. We know these guys could hurt you if they want to, but they come across professionally. So I just couldn't see. I could never get that to work in my head besides as a kayfabe thing,
Very professionally, and then I've even seen, backstage flare-ups sometime here and there, things happen and stuff, and I've seen a lot of people just stop and show Dean nothing but respect and say, yep, it's all good,
Yeah.
So just one of those things, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
well, let's go ahead and move on to the next. And I think we're going to lump these together and talk about three families simultaneously.
Yes, the way I've got this written up, and I'm going to throw them out there, then you blend back in. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
The first one, the way I'm going to do it is this. Of course, we got to go with the McMahons. You got Vince Sr., Vince Jr., and of course you got Stephanie and Shane and now Hunter. And and of course that's WWF up to the WWE.
Mm-hmm.
We can't leave off the Crockett family, from Jim Sr. to Jim Jr. to them running the Carolinas, all through the Mid-Atlantic region there, promoting professional wrestling and concerts and things like that. And then of course the Jarretts. You got Christina Jarrett, Jerry Jarrett, Eddie Marlin, and Jeff Jarrett, of course, from Continental Wrestling to the USWA Wrestling to Jeff Jeff opening up the I think the TNA, and then also went on to GWF as well, and of course just that whole family. Just like I said, I think I mentioned Continental and USA Wrestling there, all through the back in the territory days, I guess you will, all the way up to what they did now, because I guess Impact is somewhat of an offshoot of the original TNA. Is that correct?
It is. Yeah, I mean, it is basically a renamed TNA. It's, obviously it's been acquired by somebody, but So
anyway, let's lump them out there, but go ahead, Professor.
Well, I was going to say, in this case, I would say that probably the McMahons are the most impactful family on pro wrestling. Since basically they're, for 20 years, they were really the only, wrestling company that really mattered. They were the first one to take wrestling national. Of course, the old man probably would have had a heart attack if he knew what his son was getting ready to do.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
But, they're probably the most impactful. But I think when you look at the big picture of how we got to where wrestling is today, I don't think we put enough credit or blame on the Crockett's either.
I agree with you. I was hoping you'd bring that up, man.
Yeah.
They carried such a vast, just in that Mid-Atlantic region, if just through the Carolinas, Virginia, and even going down into Georgia and some in West Virginia and Kentucky and up through Ohio, just over in that whole area, though, but mostly in the Carolinas, that Mid-Atlantic part of it. Man, they were just so over, and that was just that's a good territory, to work just the Carolinas and Virginia and touches of Georgia, Tennessee, whatever, like I mentioned there. But of course, once they crossed west of the Mississippi and started going, Denver and California or LA, San Francisco, some of those markets, I guess that's where they kind of crossed the line of trying to get too big too fast, or what, Jeremy?
Well, I mean, depending on how you listen to the stories, it sounds like Jim Crockett pretty much, if Dusty wanted to do something, Jim just kind of went, well, fuck, here's the checkbook, you know, and it, got down to the point where they didn't have any cash left. But yeah, I mean, Jim Crockett Promotions eventually took over the NWA, basically.
Right, yes.
He consolidated a number of those southeastern companies, even to the point where he ate up the UWF, Cowboy Bill Watts company, even though if he had just waited a year, it would have died and he could have just picked it up on its own anyways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were gobbling stuff up, spending money where they didn't need to spend it, but they were trying to match the McMahon family dollar for dollar. Yeah.
But if they just stayed in that Mid-Atlantic region and done those normal once every 3-month tours they did up in Ohio and Michigan or somewhere like that, even over here in West Virginia, that was a loop they did. That was probably their farthest loop up this away, being from the Carolina area, as their home base, South Charlotte. And then, like you said, basically took over the Atlanta and then over to, like I said, Watts. They just waited a little bit longer. If it wasn't, I don't know how much pressure it was to, but with McMahon expanding like he did, they had to do what they thought was best too, So anyway, so we went over just kind of briefly. You can't leave those families off the list,
No, well, and the other thing I want to point out real quick about the Jarretts, I mean, first off, Memphis wrestling was gigantic. I mean, starting with Christine Teeny Jarrett, but when they thought that Vince McMahon was going to go to the Hooskow for, a little bit of time over that steroid scandal, his hand-picked guy to run the WWF was Jerry Jarrett.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. That's right. And that's why you're a professor. So we're going to kind of tie these other families into that. Mm-hmm. So I'll just put this out there. The Welch-Fuller family, okay? They're probably the first family of pro wrestling. And I just want everyone to know you can follow Ron Fuller at Ron Fuller Welch on Twitter, the TennesseeStud.com. Man, go to his podcast and you can get from day one of Professional Wrestling 101 to stories all the way through, man. And what a great storyteller the Tennessee Stud is. And he's a great guy. He actually done a opening for us somewhere when Tex met him down at one of the Starcades or something like that, one of those shows. I know his brother Robert. I was there was a time when I was in Tampa. Well, actually, I'd already been training and stuff, just living in an area, and I'd go to a gym, and Robert came through when he was working as Colonel Parker there in WCW, and he asked. I had a couple of chances to go to Memphis. That's what the point of the story is. Pat Tanaka had talked to me about it when I was in Tampa, but Robert Fuller had talked to me, and I was kind of dying to go there. I was willing to starve, but I didn't go because I probably wasn't ready, and I probably was not good enough to be quite honest. But later on in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I got to meet up with Robert again when he was working with Stud Stable, complete gentleman stuff. But then by the time I spoke to Randy Hills and I was working for Cornette and was going to have about 3 months off, and they asked me to come over, and I talked to Randy about actually coming in and was seriously going to, but the money just wasn't right, and at the time where I was living at, it just wasn't feasible for me to, because at that point I already had my oldest son was just being born, and it's just more feasible for me to stay at home and work as many local indie shows as I could during that 3-month period versus going out to the Memphis territory. It's not a regret, but I did have that chance, courtesy of Randy Hales and Corny talking to me about it. It just didn't work out, and I talked to several of the boys, and it just wasn't worth it. But anyway, the Welch family was kind of tying at it because they had the come up to what we probably the closest we know modern day was continental wrestling and stuff. But way back when, I guess Roy was his grandfather and then Herb was his uncle of the Welch family. And just like I said, best thing you can do on that is hit up Ron Fuller on Twitter at the Tennessee Stud there, or listen to his Studcast, because man, he can tell a story. And it just, some of his wrestling stories and just the way the history of the business, that's your best bet to go to. I'll put that out there for you, Professor. So
no, it's I would say that the Fuller Welch family is American pro wrestling. I mean, it doesn't start without them. I mean, and I'll I will encourage everybody to go check them out on your own, because I am not going to do I'm not going to do this any justice, and I didn't do any reading up on it before. I'm going completely off of older memories. Yeah. But they would go into a territory and basically take it over at gunpoint if they had to, run it, juice it, sell it, and get the fuck out and go do it somewhere else.
Yeah, they'd hot shot it, they'd buy it and hot shot it and sell it and go.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it any justice either. But go and listen to the Tennessee Stud on his Studcast. Which is going to lead us to the next family who I happen to know pretty good, know all the members of the family actually, and that's because of the Continental tie-in there, and that's the Bob Armstrong, his 4 sons, you got, of course you got Brad, who's passed away, but he was a tremendous talent in the wrestling business. What a tremendous talent. Then you got Scott, who's a WWE agent right now, and Road Dogg Brian, his youngest, he's an agent. And then there's Steve Armstrong also. I got really close with all 3 of the actual Brad too, but with Smoky Mountain Wrestling, my first loop in, I met Scott and Steve, and then the second loop I met the Bullet, and man, he was probably close to my age now when I met him, and guy was in such great shape, but such a where he had been a promoter, because he had owned Continental at one point and promoted, all throughout, been a big star on the Georgia Championship, NWA. Armstrong, I just can't say enough about the James family. They're good people. I know Bob recently lost his wife, Gail, and they was married for they just had their 6-year anniversary. But what a great wrestling family. You can't mention this, can't say you're going to do wrestling families with not mentioning the Armstrong family on this podcast. And I have nothing but a lot of good memories from the traveling with them. One time I was the Armstrong family driver. We'd joke around about it sometime, depending on who I rode with or who they rode with. But if ever there was one of the brothers that I remember one time we went to Minnesota, and I think Steve got sick, and so Brad was riding with Nick Patrick, and Scott and I just did the whole loop together. Everyone just kind of split up. But then in Tennessee, Scott was doing WCW when he first started with them. I was riding with Steve because he had it. Brad was already hadn't come in yet. So it's one of those things. And Brad had actually got a start there as a Dark Shadow, but he was already moved on to WCW, then WWF. As Road Dogg. So just got to know those guys. And Bullet, like I said, I can't say enough good things about him. He had talked to me. One of those locker room leaders that I talk about sometimes, word comes through. He was commissioner, but, word come through that in the babyface side, Cornette probably sent word like, hey, tell Bobby this or tell me that. Kind of like with Ricky, maybe tell me to sell more or less, kind of thing. Bullet would say, hey, maybe this spot's not the best spot here, or take it completely out of your match, or add this to it, or have you tried this, So nothing but positive reinforcement, to how to best get over, if you will. So good stuff about the James family, or Armstrongs. I'm sorry. You have anything to add about them? Because I know you've got something coming up after this.
Yeah, just a quick one here. Now, I'm not going to take anything away from the others, but sure. I think Brad Armstrong looked the most, wrestled the most. That guy should have been a star. And I don't understand what happened. I don't get it. 'Cause I know Jim Crockett, they tried to push him when they put that, was the light heavyweight title or and it was like nothing worked. And then of course Jim Herd comes in and makes him some knockoff Spider-Man. And then it was just the run of stupid gimmicks after that.
I don't know. I know this. I flew in to Louisiana, took a ride. I had to go to Lake Charles, Louisiana. Pulled up to the building. I think it was me, Scott, Steve, and Brad together, had got the rent-a-car together. We're going, I don't know how recently WCW had been there, but as we're walking in the back, there was an old-time security guard there, and he said, man, and of course, Brad worked out there, and he worked for NWA and stuff, and the guy said, Brad Armstrong, he said, man, the last time I saw you, and this security guy, so he said to take this time just talking to us, letting us in. He goes, Brad Armstrong, last time I saw you, man, he goes, you had one of the best matches I've ever seen in my life, and it was against Ric Flair right in this building. And Brad was looked at him and go, really? Thanks, man. You remember that? And he goes, yeah, they had a little comment, and we went on in, and Brad talked to him. Then I was at to justify this a little bit, not that it needs justification, but down at Universal Studios we filmed for 10 damn days, like 5 tapings a day. One of the last matches of the last taping after 10 days, it was just a worldwide TV taping, and it was Brad Armstrong versus Ric Flair. And I'm going to tell you, Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, myself, Eddie Guerrero, might be a few more I'm leaving out, probably Scott and Steve for sure. Anyway, we were all right around the monitor, and they went about 10 minutes, and I'm telling you what, they put on a friggin' wrestling clinic, let me tell you. I don't know why Brad wasn't a bigger star either, and that's not of my concern, because I have nothing but to say I'd put him over anywhere gladly, and rightfully so. But him and Flair put on a clinic in that 10 minutes they had that day. So I can't imagine seeing them live like I said, maybe at the Lake Charles Coliseum or auditorium or whatever the name of that building was. But I just remember it was in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and a guy remembered it from like 20 years ago. So, I can't say enough good stuff about Brad, his talent. Looking apart, being the part, and everything.
Yeah, just the guy should have been a bigger star. Maybe at the time he was too small. Maybe that was the problem. I don't know.
Might have been. I don't know. I mentioned someone in there. I think you have some information about one of the guys I just now mentioned in that story. The Guerrero family.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, all right. So the Guerreros, God, I did a little bit of research on this because, I've seen a Guerrero wrestle in just about every wrestling company I've ever looked at. Matter of fact, it was a couple weeks ago, I was watching an old WCCW match, and there were 2 Guerreros and Jose Lothario on a 6-man tag team.
Holy shit.
Yeah, you want to talk about like some star power right there.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, we start with, Gory, and this I didn't know. Gory took that name because he used to have bloody matches. I didn't know that.
Well, you are a professor. You looked that up and you sent it to me, man. There was all kinds of great information you sent me. So. Yeah,
he was born Salvador Guerrero Quesada. His first match was in 1937. He is credited with creating the Camel Clutch, the Gory Special, the Gory Siamese Twin, and it looked like a couple Brainbusters and a pile driver as well.
Yeah, and I think the Guerreros actually, if I'm not mistaken, they used that reverse or that tombstone pile driver back in the day too.
I think that was one of them. I was having trouble following a few of those.
Yeah, I think one of them was. Anyway.
Yeah, they had let's see, was it 4 or 5 sons? I think it was 4 sons. Chavo Classic, Mando, Hector, and Eddie. And Eddie is like 18 or 20 years younger than his next brother. So there was quite the spread in ages there. And apparently Gory liked to put the hammer down, I'm guessing, because that would have made him quite a bit older, and yet he's still popping out kids.
Yeah. And of course I got to meet Hector Guerrero when I first broke into the wrestling business. I had a match. He was doing the Lasertron gimmick, and I had a match with tag match, me and Buddy Landell against Lasertron and handsome Jimmy Valiant, or Boogie Woogie Man Valiant. So, and I met Hector several more times in the years down at Universal Studios for WCW. And of course I knew Chavo. Chavo was just coming in about the same time I was in WCW, and everyone knows what a huge star he went on to be, and really good guy. And I guess he had a lot to do producing or helping with the Glow Wrestling. That's on Netflix. I think he's one of the producers or helps with that in the background. And
Bobby, are you talking about Chavo Jr. here?
Jr., yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I went past several Mondo. I went past Chavo in Classic, and I went past Mondo. Mondo, he was in the book we talked about with one of our shooters, Gene LaBelle. We both talked about that before. And, of course, I got to wrestle Eddie Guerrero a couple times. And I will say, as talented and as good as Dean was in the ring, Eddie was very, very one of the smoothest in the ring. He's probably the lightest person I ever worked with. As soon as you grab him or he grabs you, it's go. It's go time. I mean, it's just one fluid, smooth motion, man. And I got to wrestle him in Erie, Pennsylvania. And also I wrestled in Sarasota, Florida. But in Erie, it's like in the winter, it's real cold. And, of course, it's cold. It's fucking Erie. It's in the winter, Bobby. Yeah. But anyway, we had a really good match. And when a lot of people that saw it on TV, he gave me so much stuff. He just caught it on the ring, on the fly. Let's go. All I had to know was the 5-star splash. That's all I needed to know. He come up to me. He's like, he'd already seen me around, know me around, saw my work and stuff, and knew I was one of Dean's, guys. But he said, Bobby, get in the ring, just listen, five-star splash, frog splash, whatever, what do you want to call it? But anyway, man, a lot of people thought I was going to win that match because it was really that competitive and it was a good match. The second time I wrestled was in Sarasota, and that's when I was almost ready to leave. He had already had to falling out with Bischoff, and there was some I wasn't in the room, so I can't say who done what. All I know is supposedly some coffee got thrown on someone in the war room with Bischoff, and I guess Eddie and maybe Saturn and Dean, some other guys, they might have been in the room. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just going on hearsay on that.
Yeah.
But I know I was on the board that night to wrestle Eddie, and he was kind of around the building. I wasn't going to bother my, you hear these little whispers throughout, shit's going to happen, this and that. So when it come time to work, Eddie just come up to me again like, Bobby, basically it's going to be a line off, he said. And I could just tell, nothing but professional, though. He goes, you just stay on me. I'll cut you off when I want to, but whatever you do, stay on me, and you know the finish. I go, yeah. And I just did it. It wasn't as smooth as the first match because, I basically was staying on them, just, beating them. Not a whole lot I was going to do. Like I picked them up, suplexed them, done whatever, my stomps and some things like that. But it's like so easy to work with, man, in the ring, and such a kind human being too. Just a real loving man, and not saying that just because he passed away or anything like that, or now deceased, whatever, but he really was. So that Guerrero family, though, I think there's been a Guerrero on TV or in a wrestling ring or in some company that you've watched in one form or another. You've had, like you said, you've seen a Guerrero's, a Guerrero, you quoted me, or I quote you, a Guerrero has worked in every major promotion, WWE, WCW, AWA, NWA, CMLL, EMLL, ECW, and others. I'm sure that I've probably forgotten. That's the homework of the great professor right there, folks. He talking about the Guerrero family. So, Professor, thanks for that good background checking and homework on that Guerrero family. Again, we can't say enough about these people and these families.
And then, of course, automatically, that means I left out world class right off the top.
Yeah.
But, I was going to say, now out of all those.
Worked in Continental, actually, too, I think.
There we go.
They probably worked in so many damn towns and territories, man, So that's not even, jeez, yeah.
Well, I think after I throw this in there, Hector, of course, was the gobbledygooker. Can't leave that out.
Yeah, I was referring to him as Lasertron. Yeah, I forgot that.
But he also was part of the Spanish announce team for TNA Wrestling until 2015. So I think officially right there, we have tied the Guerrero family to every wrestling organization, because Mondo used to work LA and San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that means he was in this loop here. We have now tied the Guerrero family to every major Mexican and North American wrestling company in the last, what would that be, 50 years, 60 years?
I'm gonna say 60 plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 60 plus.
That's impressive. And then, of course, Eddie Guerrero was just charismatic.
Yeah.
I mean, he,
needless to say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about, who was a better wrestler, not in those words, but like Dean or Eddie Guerrero. And I think Eddie, I would have to give Eddie the edge just because he's almost up there with like Dusty and Superstar Billy Graham as far as just like presence in the ring, like ability to draw eyeballs and talk,
Once he got up here to New York, man, for WWF, for WWE, and they just let him shine. They let him be himself, and man, he just got up the Latina heat, just the whole deal. They done that. They turned him loose. The charisma just oozed from him, That's it. It just, So, all right. Do we need to talk about anything else in here before we go on to the next family real quick?
I think that's it for the Guerreros. But Bobby, on top of having a podcast and having a wrestling career, I understand you've also written a couple books.
Oh, yeah. I've got a couple books out there. They're available on Amazon. I'm going to give you a couple of tiny URLs that if you'll purchase one of my books or both my books, the show will get a little bit of kickback from it. And so if you'd like to get my first book, which is called Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boost, Will Travel, just use the tiny URL tinyurl.com/blazebook1, and that'll take you right to the site, and you can purchase the book right there on Amazon. Again, the show will get a little bit of the kickback. My second book's called I Kicked Out on It Too, The Education of a Wrestler, and you can get that at tinyurl.com/blazebook2. Those are real easy to access. The Pin Me, Pay Me book has over 100, I think it's up to like 110 reviews now. Got a lot of positive feedback on both of them, but to have over 100 reviews on a book is just very impressive. And again, they're available on Amazon at, under Bobby Blaze Smedley. But the best way to do it, I think, is just do an extra click and hit tinyurl.com/blazebook1 for Pin Me, Pay Me. Hit tinyurl.com/blazebook2 for I Kicked Out on Two, The Educational Wrestler. And I appreciate any purchase you do make. I also, as an author, I do appreciate any reviews, good, bad, and indifferent. But what I ask for is a fair and honest review. And reviews help authors sell books. And if we sell a couple books off there, this podcast, the Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze, and with my great co-host, the Professor Jeremy Vilmer, the show gets a little bit of kickback out of that. And we always appreciate that very much, Jeremy.
Yes, absolutely. And, Bobby's got another book on there if you want to do some searching around,
Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah.
Look that up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good call, Professor.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with, again, we're not doing these in a certain particular order. We're just kind of throwing out these families, and we hope we're doing them justice. The next family, just kind of Jeremy and I'm gonna tell the name of the team. I'm gonna let Jeremy. Okay, it's the Samoans. It's Alpha and Sika. Hit it, Professor. How do you say the last name?
All right. So according to the website, according to the website I looked up, it's pronounced Anoi.
Okay.
Anoi. Yeah.
Okay.
So please, if you are part of that family and I pronounce it wrong and you see me on the street, do not headbutt me. Absolutely. It was best intentions.
Alpha and Sika, they were trained by High Chief Peter Maivia. They broke in about like 1973. They made their WWF debut in like 1980. So I wrote down after this, I put there's too many to name, but the Samoan family, I mean, you just can't, I don't know. You can go all the way from like I said, way back when you was telling me earlier about how big of a star High Chief Peter Maivia was out there, and of course we just do the bloodline of the Samoans and the blood brother line as well. I don't know. I'm afraid I'd leave someone off if I started naming them, but there's just so many I don't even know.
Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how this works together. So the Maivia family and the Anoi family are related through blood brother status, which I don't know a lot about Samoan culture, but I believe that puts them in like a clan-like structure, if not a direct family-like structure.
Yeah.
So they're practically related if they are not related. So we're going to treat that like one lineage anyways. So the Anoi Maivia connection is kind of all included in here.
Right. And again, if you want to on that anchor.com, hey, leave us a message on there. We might put it on the show if you like to, send us some information or have a question about that. And you might think, they just breezed over a couple of names just because there's probably too many to name. But, these families are all, like you said like a clan-like or a blood brotherhood type thing. This next couple families I'm going to mention here, Professor, might be your fictional families, if you will, or show families, if you will, or for the running program of the name. The first one I'll bring up, of course, are the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, the Andersons. You got Lars, Gene. I just looked out the window. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, Lars, Gene, Ole, Arn.
Thank God. Sorry, folks.
Ric Flair.
And his cousin was Ric Flair.
Yeah.
I have the notes here. I knew them. I looked out my window and I saw this damn cat, and I hadn't seen it for a couple of days. So I apologize. That was me. I apologize. I have Lars, Gene, Ole, Arn, and cousin Ric Flair. Just so you know, I do know a little bit about the wrestling history. But no, I was telling you about the Ask Arn I mentioned earlier the other day. They do these clips on YouTube. And of course, we have a YouTube channel too at tinyurl.com/BBBB video. that the Texas taken care of, and we've got a ton of videos over there for like 1.5 million views, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, back when Arn, he talked about a pair of boots that he had that only 4 people had worn, and he was the 4th one that they had originally given him, and it was a pair of the old Anderson boots. I thought that was a really, really good story, man, of him talking about the pride he took in being a, quote, Anderson when he come into the wrestling business, or got into moving on down, getting into the NWA kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So, Lars, Gene, Ole, and Arn, and a cousin, Ric Flair.
Yeah, and so that's 4 tough fucking men right there. I mean, if you ever watch their matches, they just stomp the shit out of people. It's just, and probably when you watch that, you'll probably see like some of the greatest tag team tactics were kind of developed in that grouping, where cut the ring in half, work the shit out of the other guy, fast tags.
Or one body part of the other guy. Yes.
Yeah, and it's also funny to me, like Anderson is such a Norwegian name, like that Minnesota Viking group area, right?
Yeah. Right.
And because Arn Anderson doesn't sound a thing like he's from Georgia at all,
Yeah. And he was such a good talker too. It's kind of one of them things. He was quick and to the point and to the word, and he said what he meant. He meant what he said, kind of thing. So we've always put them over on our show. Yeah. And like you said, watching tag team action, like you said, cutting a ring in half, quick tags in and out, keeping a fresh body in there, working that same body part and stuff. And they made so many babyface teams, man, because of the way they worked. And all the babyface had to do was fucking listen and sell. And they'd beat you down, but they'd build you back up for that comeback because they knew how to get heat as heels, man.
Oh, yeah.
What a great, all them guys, any combination, just really was over. So
I couldn't remember the actual match if I had to, but I do remember on WTBS Saturday night one time. It was I think it was Arn and Ole against the Rock and Roll Express.
Okay.
And they got Ricky, and they are just beating the shit. I think he was in a hammerlock for like 7 minutes with them just going in.
Yeah, you're probably right. Probably Rock and Roll and probably Ricky selling for 6.5 minutes.
Yep. Oh, and I remember it, in TBS they had that small audience. Yeah. But the thing I love about a studio audience is you cannot bullshit their reaction.
Right.
If people
they didn't pump any fake
no
audience sounds. I like that. You're right.
If they start to get upset in the audience, or they're starting to worry about the guy who's getting the shit kicked out of him in the ring, you hear it.
Yep.
You know it. So yeah, that's a great. Yeah, that's a great family right there. Just some of the toughest, baddest sons of bitches that can also work a microphone, There
you go. I'm going to mention a couple more storyline families just real briefly here, and we can add in however you like. I'll put this family really quick. The Valiant family, you had Handsome Jimmy, of course, Luscious Johnny, and Gentleman Jerry. Big tag team champions up there in New York at one time, got over huge. Flashy, the blonde hair, long blonde hair, the tan bodies, those kind of things. And I'm just going to kind of breeze over them. And I know Jimmy Valiant is really such a nice human being, I'll tell you that. But, they just got over it. It was just a flashy gimmick for them, with the handsome, the gentleman and, Luscious and all that. Because I'm going to take us to the next family, the Graham family, which you had Eddie Graham, of course, but you had Crazy Luke, Dr. Jerry Graham, and superstar Billy Graham. Of course, you had Mike Graham in there too, and I'm sure I'm leaving out some, but those, those work cousins, if you will, everyone knows what a great, the story about Eddie Graham in Florida, running the Florida territory, learning the book from Dory Sr., and then how he kept that going. Crazy Luke, my brother, I had basketball practice. I know we'll get this. We joke about it sometime. I remember seeing Crazy Luke, but the next month, he brought his cousin back with him, which was Dr. Jerry Graham. And I never got to see Dr. Jerry Graham work live. My brother did. But I know that was Vince's favorite wrestler supposedly was Dr. Jerry Graham. And, of course, I think everyone knows who the great superstar Billy Graham is as being, former WWW and WWF champion back in the day with those big, huge arms. And so many people copied that gimmick through the years as far as, the bleached blonde hair and the big muscular tan body and the rainbow or psycho or what do you call that fucking
tie-dye
pattern, and just got over huge with that body. But those guys were another, one of those fictional working line, storyline families that was over pretty cool, man. Just kind of threw them out there, the Andersons, the Grahams, and the Valiants. And again, if you've got a family that we left off here, we kind of just missed over some. Be sure to send us a message. Hit me up at Twitter at BobbyBlaze744 or Jeremy at the GeekaCast or the tag team Twitter at Bell to Bell Blaze, or leave a message over there on Anchor FM for us on our site there. I'm going to throw out a couple more, Jeremy, before we wrap things up. I know we got about 3 more families to go over. Are you ready for a couple more?
Well, can I make a comment real quick?
Absolutely, man.
So this is specifically with the Valiants and the Grahams.
Okay.
Right before the start of this year, I had started kicking around the idea of taking a quote unquote kayfabe last name, and the two I was trying to choose between were Graham and Valiant. And, cause I thought Professor Jeremy Graham sounds like Dr. Jerry Graham, and Professor Jeremy Valiant just has a flow on its own since my last name already starts with a V.
Yeah.
And those were the two that I kept like kicking back and forth thinking if I did this, those were the two I was going to try to pick from. Not saying.
So for now on, you are going to be known as the Professor. What? Jeremy Valiant?
That's I got to kick it around, Bobby. But I did want to point out that those two names are some huge names in wrestling, and they're ones to always look at.
Man, you could be part of the working storyline as one of the great Valiant brothers, man. You've come through for us, Professor. You're the smart one of the group, brother. You're the smart one.
Oh, man. Yep. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
That. Okay. Remember that, folks. Hit us up there. All right. Next family I'm going to mention is the Wyndham family. Of course, you had Blackjack, when it's Blackjack Mulligan. Big Barry, man, we've talked about him on this program so many times about, what a huge star we thought he could have been and was, of course, but we talked about how talented he was in the ring, and 86, 87, how great, no one could probably fucking touch Barry Windham. That guy he was having matches that was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
His brother Kendall, and then her son-in-law's Mike Rotundo, former Syracuse University wrestler and varsity club wrestler and IRS, and I just liked his work, when he was just Mike Rotundo kicking ass everywhere. And I guess he's got a couple sons there, Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas, and I might be leaving someone off that family, but I hope I'm not. So talk a little bit if you want to about the Wyndham family, because I know we got 2 big families coming after us as far as a lot of people in the family.
Well, for me, I mean, obviously I knew who Blackjack Mulligan was, but I think I knew who Barry Windham was for a couple years before I knew he was Blackjack's son.
Yeah. Oh, me too. It took several years.
Yeah. But Barry, I mean, like when he was in the Horseman and he'd come out, leather vest and fucking chaps and that top rope, Widowmaker suplex.
Yeah. That was my favorite. Part of the Horseman too, by the way. We've talked about that before. I love when Barry joined him. I just thought he fit that group so good, man.
Oh, he did. Definitely. It's just, me, what a fucking fan I am of Tully. So,
yeah, I know.
Yeah. So you take him out, it's going to be my second favorite. But
I got you. I understand.
Not because it sucked. I mean, it was fucking awesome. It's just,
I
happen to like Tully and that little fucking cocky rooster attitude.
Yeah. And you could check out the YouTube about how he was our number one heel at one point on that YouTube channel. At tinyurl.com/BBBB video.
That's
or
it.
Just go to the Bell to Bell Bobby Blaze, Bell to Bell Blaze, I think on YouTube, and listen to Jeremy the Professor puts over, and so do I. Tully Blanchard got some good stories on there, and just we've got regional heels on some of our top 10 lists, and Tully tops that list at number 1 for the regional heel. It was awesome, man. The next family, real quickly, I know we're just kind of getting to these in no certain order, but Stu Hart, his family, the Big Hart family, Stu was a booker, promoter, coach, trainer up there in the dungeon, and it kind of goes back to like we was talking about at the beginning of the show when we mentioned all the promoters up there, and I'm sure we left off a bunch more folks on the promoters of the big families. But some of these guys with their families also promoted wrestling locally, to help you get started and get you some training and get some matches under your belt before you actually got a break, maybe out in the territory or out on TV nowadays. But you had Stu Hart, he had him and Helen. You got Smith, Keith, Bruce, Wayne, Dean, Ross, and Diana. And, of course, you got most notable Brett and Owen Hart. He had grandkids, Natalia, through Jim Neidhart, Teddy, and David Hart Smith. So, anyway, there's a big family, and I'm sure I'm missing a bunch if I didn't. I know when I was out in the Maritimes working a couple summers there, I'd go out there for like 16 weeks and do a territory back in the day. And I remember the guys I was with, Goldie Rogers and Eddie Watts and Leo Burke, and some of those guys, they had all worked in Calgary when the Maritimes only ran, like I said, about 16, 18 weeks out of the year, but they'd worked for Calgary and changed talent throughout the year. But I'd hear stories about some of the other, Hart brothers as well, who drove and who set the ring up and who done this and do that. Of course, the big talk was, of course, about Brett and Owen, and then some of the other guys that had come through Calgary with them. But I had heard some of those names before, and until I looked them up, I'd forgotten all of them except for, honestly, besides Brett, Owen, and Diana, just because of the recent Dark Side of the Ring episode or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That name, that's the only reason. Anything about that big, huge family before we go on to another one?
Well, I do got to point out that actually Stampede Wrestling there in Alberta was
I said Calgary.
Well, no. Calgary's a city.
Okay, my bad. Yeah. I'm all. You get me all fucked up?
No. I was
change your name on us and fuck me up. I see how you are.
So I'm pulling the Roddy Piper. You thought you knew the answers, and I changed all the questions.
That's right.
And Roddy Piper was part of the Hart family too.
There you go.
Yeah. So Stampede Wrestling was opened in 1948, which is the same year that the NWA was formed, and it ran until 1984. So for almost 50 years, Stu Hart ran that company. And it was the largest Western Canadian wrestling promotion. See, we're down here in America, and we don't really know Stampede all that well. Up there, It was a big deal.
Well, they had, I don't know how many of those years, but they had TV, I think, throughout pretty much most of those years. I heard some of the road trips were really brutal. I know that. And I guess I can't tell you how many worldwide stars do you think came through there? Because they took guys in from Japan and Mexico and probably other places too, and as well as the U.S., of course, and Canada. How many stars did they make out of the Stampede Wrestling through the years? Guys that I was just watching some old clips of Bad News Allen. I know he worked there at one time,
Mm-hmm.
Brian Pillman back in the day worked there. I'm just trying to think of some
Dynamite Kid.
There you go, Dynamite Kid. There you go, man.
Yeah.
Just the talent they took in. I know Kishi Yamada, better known as Jushin Thunder Liger, went through there, So, and I'm sure a lot of other Japanese stars too. But, yeah, you can't say enough about that territory. And, of course, with that said, you can't not leave probably the Hart family off this list of our great families.
Yeah.
Anything else before we move on to one of our last ones? If not our last one. Time-wise, it may be our last one, it looks like. I don't know. And I hope everyone's enjoyed, all you wrestling fans. Hey, fact check us. But, hey, I hope you really enjoyed our list so far with all these great names and wrestling families throughout the years of professional wrestling. Just didn't want to leave anyone off these families.
Oh, yeah.
Missed anyone, I'm sorry.
As we go to our last family, let's do this real quick. Bobby, we were talking a little bit ahead of time. You actually have a deal worked out with Collar and Elbow and some of their wrestling T-shirts and gear. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Al Snow, he's got a shoot interview with, if you go to Collar and Elbow brand.com. A quicker way to get there, though, is tinyurl.com/BB Collar. Okay. And that's the collar X elbow. But if you go to tinyurl.com/BB Collar, they got some great merchandise. There's a shoot interview of Al Snow and Stone Cold Steve Austin showing her. But if you go to their page, you'll see toboggans. You'll see women's tank tops and T-shirts and wear. I've got some really nice, I got a pro wrestling that used to look like the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. Got a really nice red red shirt that says Pro Wrestling, and instead of illustrated, it says collar and elbow. I've got a gray workout shirt that says collar and elbow. They got the Bobby Blaze, the BLAZE in big letters in yellow, red, and green. No, yellow, red, and black, and bright blue. And if you use the code BLAZE, if you go to tinyurl.com/BB collar, that is my affiliate link. And if you go to that, I'll get a little bit of commission, but more importantly, you get 10% off your order, man. So go in there and look at some stuff. They've got about every wrestler you can imagine, but they got the great collar and elbow wear that you can work out in. It's where Street Smarts is happening, man. I don't know their logo off the top of my head. I'll try to rehearse that for next week, but I just know they got some really sweet T-shirts. I'm trying to think. I've got one more off of them that someone asked me about when I'm wearing out that just says collar and elbow on it. They got some nice caps on there too. Some really nice baseball cap style hats that say collar and elbow. Anyway, give me a follow on there, or look up my affiliate link at tinyurl.com/BB collar and help a brother out, because it's good brothers, man. Help a good brother out. So I can tell you.
Well, it's Al Snow's company, and I think you said Luke Gallows has something to do with it as well.
Yep.
And
Big Luke, shout out Big Luke. I talked to him the other day on Twitter.
Yep,
He's doing good.
And guys, it's like Wrestling Tees. I believe that it's like wrestlers can put their merch or their T-shirt designs or something up there, and this helps generate money for them. Which I think going into the period of time we're going into, when wrestlers are going to have to be more like comic book artists and actors and fucking gig all the time. And, I think T-shirt sales and merchandise sales are going to be huge.
Well, Collar and Elbow approached me early on. They helped sponsor me as an athlete. I'm a sponsored athlete by Collar and Elbow brand. And I was approached by them, and I appreciate that opportunity. They originally started, I guess, to help a couple of the older wrestlers out, is what they told me. Giving you an outlet so you could put some T-shirts out there.
That's awesome.
It's really awesome, because I haven't recently, but I've talked to Al Snow since this company has come around. He had a guy speak to me, and we were at the same an appearance together. Within a couple of days of that, they got me a bunch of T-shirts to help push to get me started back, out there when I did go back out and do a couple of the shows that they were sponsored on, and I appreciate that very much. But yeah, they that's originally why they started it, and now they've got all kinds of different athletes that you'll see that are affiliated with them. But if you use Blaze, BLAZE, you'll get 10% off. But if you go to that tinyurl.com/BB collar, you'll get 10% off, and I can get a little bit of commission. But I'd really like to see you save some money by using my code, because they got some very, very cool wrestling wear, man.
Absolutely.
Good gimmicks.
Yeah. And, I'm trying to figure out a way we can approach them for a sponsorship on the show. So,
Yeah, I know. We've sent out some feelers on that. We'll just have to wait and see. Al Snow, if you're out there listening,
well,
return my message.
Look, I've got two that I'm really trying to hook up with right now. We've got Collar and Elbow, and then we've got the Acme Folding Steel Chair Company.
Oh, man, wait a minute. Save that, man. Them folding chairs, no.
Yeah. Well, that's why we got that pallet of folding chairs dropped off the other day.
Okay.
I know you kept eyeballing it, and that's what it is. I'm trying out some of their chairs. We're going to see if we can get like a sponsorship deal with them.
Well, I hope we do. I guess you're probably looking at guitars too, aren't you?
Yeah. It's actually El Cabong Guitars got a hold of me, and we should have one of those delivered here pretty soon to try out. I don't really know how to play a guitar, but I do know how to use them for a rhythm section. I'll figure that out as we go. Yeah.
All right, dear. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Well,
let's move on to this last family here, because we're getting all caught up in these gimmick stuff, man. But yeah, I hope your chairs come in. So last family, I'm going to throw it out there, because you, once again, being a professor, you are Professor Jeremy Valiant. I'm going to lead it with this. Excuse me. I've ran out of water here. It's too early for whiskey. Might have to have a beer when I get off here. Anyway, the Von Erich family, man, I know you've done some research, and I know we've talked to Kevin. He's written us a couple of times on the Twitter machine there. So we're, again, just I know you've done some research on them, and I know you being a WCCW fan, you really know a lot about the Von Erichs. And go ahead and tell us a little about Jack Jr. and the rest of them, or Jack and the rest of them there. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's they were Von Erich was kind of their working name, because when Jack Atkinson started as a pro wrestler, he was Fritz Von Erich, the wrestling Nazi.
Yeah.
Which to me, that is like the weirdest idea that at one point in our history, right after World War II, we had wrestling fucking Nazis in this country. Baron von Raschke was one of them, and it just makes my skin crawl thinking about it from this time period back, you know?
Yeah, but, absolutely.
But Fritz was a big, bad son of a bitch. Stronger and shit. Looked like a mean son of a bitch in the ring. And a piece I came across that I didn't know about, but was after Ricky Dozen was murdered in Japan, wrestling took kind of a nosedive, and Fritz von Erich was part of getting it back on its feet over there.
Yeah, I saw that in your notes. When I read that, I was like, I never knew that, man. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, and in Japan, Fritz was just called the Iron Claw.
Okay.
I love the way Japanese wrestlers are named, by the way, where they're just like, hey, what's he do? Hey, he uses the claw. Well, okay, we're calling him the Iron Claw.
Yeah, did you shake his hand in the locker room? Oh shit, what a grip. Iron Claw.
Did you ever see those videos of like Kerry, and they were talking about how you'd use that claw so much that eventually your hand just started getting strong, and they'll show them pick up an apple and crush it and shit like that. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
I don't know if that was real or not, but that was kind of wild to see.
Yeah. I don't know. But the Von Erichs, man, they were so over. You had Kevin, David, Kerry, Mike, and Chris, and they, as you said, they were just, where's all the blowjobs at? Probably Dallas, Texas, that's where they're at. But, man, that family is probably over more than any other family, wouldn't you say?
I would say so.
I know we're finishing up. I just want to hear if you're going to say it or not. Well, we didn't really put these in any certain order, and I just want to make sure that everyone's aware.
No, but I mean, if you go
families.
Yeah, if you go back and you watch like them coming out to the ring, they're getting molested. First off, almost half the audience is chicks. Now, whether they're 18 or 80, you can't really say, but they're getting, manhandled on their way to the ring by women kissing them and grabbing them and stuff. They were hotter than shit as far as like the chicks in the audience went. But, we had David, who the rumor is was going to get an NWA title shot. After David,
I heard that. Yeah, read that.
After David passed away, Kerry did get a title shot. Yeah. They probably had the hottest feud ever in wrestling with the Freebirds.
Yeah. I got to say I was going to use this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. We had a rule on this show, the Freebird rule. So one of our fictional families could be the greatest family of all time, from Brad Street, USA, the fabulous Freebirds, man, Terry Bam Bam Gordy, and Michael P.S. Hayes. And fuck me, I'm just drawing a blank all of a sudden.
Buddy Jack.
Buddy Jack, thank you.
Yeah.
So we could have thrown him up there with the fictional families, couldn't we? I guess in a way for just being brothers. I don't know. Just the way we've done our show in the past, we had that, Freebird rule in effect, and we've mentioned them just as brothers. That'd be more a fictional family, I guess, but they didn't promote or anything, but they knew how to get over. Like you said, they had a hottest Von Erichs and just stuff like that through the years. Anyway, I know we're getting posted for time here. I did have one more shout out. I'm gonna get off here. Tim and Nate from Wide Men Can't Jump, they put together a little song, the Bobby Blaze Pay Me song, I think. Professor, maybe you can get that on one of our podcast episodes here up pretty soon. I wanted to thank them guys. I wanted to thank Chad from up in West Virginia, just a little shout out for him, because I think he sent that tweet that kind of got you and I got back together of why the fuck wasn't we, we knew what happened. We explained that in season 4, episode 1. With what went on and stuff. But again, I'm just glad to be back into the podcasting with you. Again, keep texting your thoughts and prayers and positive vibes, man. And I hope everyone out there, I say it all the time, but, just please take care of each other out there. And every day, just try to do your best. And I don't know, man. Just like when I popped a while ago, this little lady's cat next door had gone away. And when I saw it come back, man, I was like, oh, there's baby. And that's what the cat's name is. I think he's about 12 years old. Been missing the last couple of nights. And I think maybe the fireworks maybe scared him a little bit.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yeah, but I saw her going out there and getting them. and I popped earlier, so that's why I did that, because that's a shoot. It's just my emotion got on me when I saw that. But listen, wrestling fans, thank you very much, and I'm going to throw it back to Professor Jeremy Valiant here and let him wrap up our show. And I do want to say thank you, Professor, no matter what the fuck you have to say.
Well, I was gonna go out and mention like what a bunch of toothless hillbillies our listeners are, but I think I'm gonna end on a happy note, and we're gonna kick it to that toothless hillbilly who sent us this awesome Bobby Blaze song. And so stick around for a second after I say goodbye, and then listen to the music. And thanks, Nate. It was a pretty awesome little thing to get. Until next time, bye bye, everybody.
Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze and the Professor Jeremy Vilmuir. Co-starring Tex in the Boiler Room, baby. Bobby Blaze, he is the man. Went toe to toe with Dan Severn. The Professor's here, he's never wrong. Once spent 6 months sleeping on a futon. Bobby Blaze, he's been around. Just ask the swingers in his hometown. He's always happy, but he don't know why. Was once billed as Kendo the Samurai. Pay me. Oh yeah, we got Bobby and Jeremy, and somewhere down in the boiler room we got Tex. They're getting things done, bringing you some quality podcasting. Download it now. Do yourself a favor, do it now. You can find them at anchor.fm/bell-to-bell-blaze. Support them, leave them a message, give them a few bucks. Do it now. Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze. Top 10s that will amaze. Just two buddies shooting the shit. But when you're done, you'll know that they're legit. Oh, Bobby, Jeremy and Tex. What a trio. What a combination. You do not want to miss this podcast. Download it. Do it now, I'm telling you. If you don't believe me, ask some other people. They'll tell you. Check them out on Twitter. Check them out on Facebook. That's anchor.fm/bell-to-bell-blaze. They'll blow your mind, trust me. Purple Haze, you're going to need some because it's going to get crazy. You're going to love it. Bobby swears a lot. Jeremy shakes his head. Tex laughs. Although there's days we don't know where Tex is because he gets lost in the boiler room. But anyhow, enjoy it. Go there. Be there. Have some fun. Take an hour out of your day. You're going to love it. Trust me. I wouldn't steer you wrong. Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze.